Many churches have card ministries. If somebody isn't able to come to church, that might warrant a phone call, but you can stay in touch with them with the card once a week. At our church, we have the cards out as you enter into the sanctuary, and anybody that wants to sign it can sign it, so that helps out a lot too. And you collect those at the end of that day, and the only thing you'll have to do is get the card. Sometimes those are really, really reasonable. They don't have to be elaborate. They can even be handmade, just to know that they've got something in the mail and someone has thought about it. This means more a lot of times than something you can't imagine. It can be a very lonely world out there when their children or their grandchildren have families who are busy. So these things are important. The prayer ministry, that's really important too. I mean, we have all kinds of niches that we can go into. All kinds of things. Campbell's Labels for Education in the Diocese of Texas, this is the big one. And this is focused on one particular organization. It's called the Down Home Camp. And this is a camp for children with very special physical needs. So they have been raising monies with the Campbell Soup labels for years to buy a van. And they're adding up, they're almost there.
My mother's church, some years ago, managed to provide the Indian reservations with 2 vans.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it is quite possible.
Absolutely. Bereavement ministry. Whenever there are funerals at your congregation, now whenever we have daughters whose families, has a family member that has passed, or a daughter who's passed, our chapter will provide that main meat dish. And we'll do that for the family. It can be their choice of turkey, a choice of ham. We can go to the home and assist with the serving, or they can have it at our church. And we assist with that, and that's a given. That takes a big load off of the family. It's enough to prepare arrangements, but when you're trying to do a repast for family or other church members that want to share in your grief, this is something that's really necessary. The Jubilee Ministry, we have a 3 o'clock service at our church for those persons who are displaced in the community, homeless, or just who are wandering out there. Now, you have to be careful when you do this. Have a male person, at your church that is able to sit in and just be there. They get a very good home cooked meal. And Jubilee Ministry is something that is approved by the Episcopal Church, and there are certain requirements for churches or congregations to have a Jubilee Ministry. You can look that up, and you may have it here. We have daughters that participate in Altar Guild, Lay Eucharistic Ministry, Lay Readers. Now, Manor House is sort of like a food pantry. We combine with 2 other churches in our area, and every Sunday donations are made, and these are brought up to the altar with the collection of the offering for that day. And these items are presented to Manor Pantry, and every now and then they'll do a distribution to the community, or the community can come there and shop. The Wednesday Bunch. At our parish, we have that, and that's for the seniors. They have a complete church service at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, and they start out by doing limited exercise. And I'm going to ask, have you ever seen that nurse on TV that does Sit and Be Fit?
Oh, yeah.
She has an exercise program where you sit right there in your chair. And you can do it every day, and you can be fit. Sit and be fit. It's wonderful. And there are a lot of other good things out there. So the Wednesday Bunch gets together and participates in that. We also facilitate Bible study. And our rector has Bible study on Tuesday night, and I think sometimes he gets a little jealous because the daughters also have one on Sunday. Because a lot of senior citizens don't want to get out when it becomes dark. The driving may be an issue, safety may be an issue. So we have one right after our first service in the morning, and they love it. We also have men that drop in. We tell them we don't exclude the men. You can come into the doors. And we take that Bible from the beginning to the end. Not only do we read scripture, we talk about how it applies to us in our daily life. And I think this is so very important. And we've gotten some wonderful, wonderful feedback. The Chrismon tree. We've had daughters in the past that have, I'm not crafty, here we go again, wonderful embroidery, cross-stitching, have done these ornaments, and they're very specific instructions on what Chrismon ornaments should be. They should be either white or silver. They should have certain symbols, and if you look up CHRISTMON, tree, you can look that up on what the requirements for that. So we use that as a teaching tool, and we have a sign out, on behalf of the Daughters of the King, and it gives the history of the Chrismon tree and its ornaments. We also have daughters that are greeters, and I'm sure you have that too. My mother's been a faithful greeter. We just have to stop her from wanting to talk for a long period of time. It's just greet. We don't care, but she'll do that, and everybody wants to talk to her, so they'll have to do that afterwards. We try to get her into the sanctuary. Don't tell my mother that also. Okay, the audio-visual ministry. We have persons with talents that record the sermons. And we have those recorded, and for a price of $3, you can get a copy of the entire sermon for that day, or speaker, or whoever's doing something that day, and you can keep it. Also, we have a website, and they call it Sermon Seconds. That means that you'll get a review of the previous sermon for that week with some extra information. So that's available on the website. Now, not all daughters have the internet. So there are times when you can use this as a tool to call them and let them know, or take them a copy of the CD. If they just have a CD player or a DVD player, they can at least hear it by the bedside, and that means a lot. I've done that, and it goes a long way. Now, you have to be careful when you take DVDs or CD players into organizations. So if you have the time to sit there, they may disappear too. We've talked about that. So you can sit there and just listen to the sermon again, and you'll always find something that you missed the first time. So you can't say, well, I don't want to hear this all over again. It makes a difference. Okay, the prayer shawls and the prayer beads. Thank God for yarn and those persons who have the talent. I can't, but I donate yarn. Every time Michael's or Joann's has a sale or that 40% coupon comes out, I get whatever I can get, and I donate it. No one complains about the colors or what it looks like. They will find a way to make something out of whatever is donated. And the card ministries. Cokesbury went out of business. I bought so many cards for about $1 a box. That's right up my alley. I love that. Okay. I'm going to talk about one very specific project that is done in the Diocese of Texas. We have a daughter by the name of Patsy Organ, O-R-G-A-N, wonderful name, and she attends St. Dunstan's. And she disseminates a daily prayer scripture. And she has used Helen Steiner Rice, Daily Inspiration for Women. She also has used Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. When I tell you, when you read that scripture for today, 6 out of 7 days, it's talking directly to me. I go, how in the world? How in the world did they know? I needed that one. That was the one that I needed. That applied directly to me. So it certainly does help me look at myself. And one day, I've got the exact date, on August 18th, 2012, one came up about service. Wow. Great is our gladness to serve God through others. For our Father taught us that all women are sisters and all women are brothers. So whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. And that's Matthew 7:12. And up under that daily offering she had, do you know someone who often serves others? Find a way to serve that person that day. And we really appreciate these things. Even if it's just a note or just a call. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate that. And even though, you didn't perform that service, it lets that person know that they're valued. God values all of us with all of our gifts and talents. So if you need this, Cindy, I'll give you a copy of that. In addition to that, a request came out on the prayer list or an I Van Far. Do any of you know her? And I got her permission to give her name. IVANNEFARR. This came out for a prayer, and on the request it said, had surgery, now has some paralysis. She's right there in my city. I said, I have to follow up on this. I have to find out about it. But, you know, to respect confidentiality, I called the hospital and I asked to speak to anyone who was in her room. I got to speak to her son. I told him I was a daughter of the king. I have never met Ivan Farr. I was calling her Ivani, but it's I-V-A-N-N-E Farr. And she was the past coordinator for Daughters at Large for the Virgin Islands. And she's in the hospital, and I did make a visit. And I told her I was a lay pastoral visitor with the Community of Hope, and I wanted to pray with her. And they were both very gracious. I was really elated. And she's at a hospital where therapy is the primary source of treatment. And she has therapy from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is really necessary, and they have found that this works. And she actually gave me permission and said she would be more than happy. I said, can I send your greetings to the daughters at the Assembly at Providence Center? She said, certainly, I'll be glad. So she's really verbal. She's really aware. Somebody else is taking over her duty. She said her primary intention was to organize all the daughters in the 5 islands in the Virgin Islands. So keep her in your prayers. I add her to the list. And she also wanted me to thank those daughters that have lifted her up in prayer. Those prayers are working. And she does continue to progress with daily therapy. So I do, number one, want to thank Patsy Organ for her servant leadership, for having this instrument for us to really be aware. And I haven't done that yet, so I'm doing it with you first, and I'm going to give her a call when I get back to Houston. And I also said continue to enjoy God's presence. And keep her in your prayers. It does take a long time, and she is making progress, and with God's help, we hope that she makes a complete recovery. Also at St. Dunstan's, there's something going on there at St. Dunstan's. Do any of you know Linda Stowell? She's one of my favorite people. She's very, very busy. She's a former president for the Diocese of Texas. And I'd like to read something to you. I'll give you a copy of this. This was a copy of the Bread for the Journey. And do I have a date on here? This was January 2012. And I'd love to read it, but this applies to service. And the title of it is, I Am But One. I was on a walk at Camp Allen some time back when I noticed that various campsites, parks, and rooms are named after people whose lives and ministries contribute to the formation and foundation of this marvelous conference center in the heart of the Episcopal Diocese of Texas. Visitors to my home parish will notice lovely plaques identifying Leonard Hall, the Mace Room, and the Bentley Education Center, which honor the ministry of those whose names they bear. And so she said, when I look at all of these, I'm reminded of our DOK motto, and that each of us, though but one, while we cannot do everything, can do something. Think for a bit about the lives you've touched as a daughter of the King, the ministries you participated in your family, neighborhood, church, and out in the world. What would you leave behind to bear your name? You who are but one. Maybe the Pat Riley Pantry, the Patricia Hardy Encourager note cards, the Kathy Rome or Lil Risen or Dora Laird intercessory prayer list, the Sue Fritz Take 'em to Church transport, the Betty Sutton bingo card, the Toy Christie Aretta Parnham cookie tray, the Jane Mace casserole dish, the Marcy Thomas, Ruby Bosch, or Carol Yates grade book, the Pam Bentley handbell, the Patsy Organ Thought of the Day book, the Harriet Organ prayer quilt. God has used each one of you, his humble servant, in many ways. big and small, but mostly small, day-to-day tasks. It might be the Susan Phelan smile, or the Charlotte Wacker comforting word, or the Mary Dolan, "Where is God in this?" challenge. Perhaps in your chapters you might want to read Romans 12, 1 through 8. Then divide into small groups and name each other's I Am But One ministry. What do you see in the people in your little group? If you don't know each other well, ask each of the others what she does that brings her great joy. One of your group might say her grandchildren, her grandmother's prayer ministry. One might say delivering meals on wheels. Another might say taking communion to those in nursing centers. Another might say making punch for funeral receptions. After you share and receive feedback from others, make a memorial plaque for yourself to take home to remind you of our motto as daughters. Good progress. Then renew your commitment to pray daily for the order, its members, and especially those you've just gotten to know better. Pray that each of us can hear God's voice clearly answering the question, Lord, what would you have me do?